Hey guys, Mike here. We got a lot of Fire Emblem news to go over today. Yesterday, Nintendo held a direct event, about a 20-minute video that went over a lot of new Fire Emblem games that they're going to be releasing here over the course of the next year or two. Now, I've built this channel on my love for Final Fantasy and on analysis of that series, but I am also a really big fan of the Fire Emblem series. It's one of my very favorite gaming franchises. And I have played every single Fire Emblem game that has been released and localized in North America. So the very first game they announced was Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. Now, if you're not familiar with the Fire Emblem series, Fire Emblem Gaiden was the second game that came out on the Famicom in Japan. It was the sequel to Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. Now, as some of you are probably aware, the word Gaiden signifies that it's a side story. So while it was a sequel, it was actually a totally separate story from the first Fire Emblem game and took place on a different continent. The first game takes place on the continent of Arcania, and this game actually took place on Valentia. And then you see that the name of that continent again here in the subtitle of Fire Emblem Echoes. So, this game is what they're saying inspired by Fire Emblem Gaiden. Now, it was interesting to me that they chose that word, inspired by. They also used the word reimagining when they were describing it. And so, for a minute, I was kind of like, well, is this like just a new game that sort of like takes elements from Fire Emblem Gaiden into it, but it's actually a different thing? Or is this a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden? I was a little bit confused by the wording, but as you look at the video that they're showing for this, it seems that they have actually matched both music and maps directly from Fire Emblem Gaiden. They sort of do a transition reveal here where they show the exact same map from the original game also being present here. So it does appear to be a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden. This is really interesting for me because Fire Emblem Gaiden, in a lot of ways, is similar to what the Adventure of Link is to the Legend of Zelda series. It really deviated a bit in gameplay style from the first one and introduced a lot of different elements that eventually were kind of abandoned again to go back to the style of the original game. Final Fantasy II did that as well, right? It seems like this was kind of common for Japanese developers in that time. They wanted to do something wildly different from the second game, but then they just kind of returned back to the previous formulas and built on those a little bit more in the ones that came after. So you might see some people refer to Fire Emblem Gaiden as the black sheep of the series, similarly to how they do with Final Fantasy II and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. In any case, this is one of the few Fire Emblem games that I have not personally played, and it has a lot of interesting elements in it that are missing from basically all the other Fire Emblem games that we have. In particular, it allows you to do the kind of exploration that you would see in more traditional JRPGs with, towns that you can visit and NPCs you can talk to, as well as some dungeon crawling elements as well. And that is actually really exciting to me. I would love to see some of those elements, implemented into a more traditional tactical RPG and see how they work. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it looks really, really cool. It's one of the few games that I have not experienced myself. It was released on the Famicom back in the very early 90s. And so this looks really, really great to me. And the best news is that it's going to be released on May 19th. Which is super close. And so I'm really, really stoked about it. And one of the coolest things about this, I'm so glad to see this, is that it is actually just one game. They're not splitting this into two different stories or two different games, kind of like they did with Fates. Actually, with Fates, they did 3 games. And they could have easily gone that route with this one, where you can either choose Alm, the main male character, or Celica, the main female character. And they've not done that, thank goodness. They've just made it one single game, and it'll be available May 19th. Super sweet. Now I'm going to have to jump in and make sure I finish all of the Fates games, because I've only really played Conquest, but I want to finish all of those before this one comes out. So I might be doing that a little bit on my Twitch channel, so just keep an eye on that in the future. Okay, the second game that they announced was a brand new Fire Emblem game on the Nintendo Switch. They didn't show anything, no art, nothing from it really. It was just an announcement that they are developing a Fire Emblem game for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is significant because it will be the first Fire Emblem game to be developed for a home console since Radiant Dawn on the Wii, and that game came out early 2007. So it's been 10 years since we've had a Fire Emblem game on home consoles. I actually discovered the Fire Emblem series by playing the prequel to Radiant Dawn, which was Path of Radiance on the GameCube, and that game is phenomenal. It is a fantastic game. If you've not played it, you should definitely check it out. It's what really sort of like sparked my interest in the series, aside from Smash Brothers. I mean, I learned about Marth and Roy from playing Melee, but that's what led me into buying Path of Radiance, which released shortly after that. And when I played that, I was like, oh man, I cannot get enough of this. And then I, of course, played the GBA titles, and then I played Radiant Dawn and Awakening and all the ones that have been officially localized since then, but have also jumped into a few of the games that were exclusive to Japan that have some fan translations. In any case, that makes it very exciting that we're going to be getting a home console Fire Emblem game coming to the Nintendo Switch, but it'll be really interesting to me to see what they do with the game to sort of like play into the unique concepts that the Switch embodies. At the moment, we don't really know anything, but it is planned for a 2018 release, so this will be coming next year. And hearing this actually increases my excitement for the Switch overall. I've shared on podcasts and, in other videos, some of the live streams and stuff, how my excitement for the Switch went down a little bit with the latest reveal event that they did, especially with the launch titles that they've announced and how long we're going to be waiting for some other ones like Mario for a holiday release. But now that I've had a few days to kind of think about it, what we have coming are Zelda Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, Dragon Quest XI, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, also in the year 2017, and Mario. So 5 really solid games coming out this year on the Nintendo Switch. And then next year, probably early next year, I would think or hope, because Fire Emblem games tend to launch early in the year, February, March, sometimes a little bit later into May. But that generally is kind of when they release. So if we get a Fire Emblem Switch game early next year, that's 6 really, really great games that are spread out in a way that makes sense to me, to have something always to look forward to and something to be playing with the next game sort of on the horizon. And so the Switch has some great titles coming to it, and that excites me a lot. Okay, the third game that they showed was Fire Emblem Warriors, and they did not show very much from this, which kind of surprised me. So there's not much to analyze or speculate on here. We know that it's the Hyrule Warriors team that is making this one. I think that for a Warriors title, that Fire Emblem makes a little bit more sense to me than Zelda does. I think that they pulled it off very well in Zelda. I'm not a big Dynasty Warriors fan, by the way. I'm not a fan of that style of gameplay. It's just not for me. Not to say that it's bad, it's just not for me. And so Hyrule Warriors, I played a little bit. I mean, more than a little bit. I probably played about 10 or 15 hours, but eventually it sort of, the appeal sort of waned on me. But I did enjoy Hyrule Warriors for what it was, and I think that it does that style of game very well. So if you're into Warriors titles, I think Hyrule Warriors was very good, and that you can expect kind of a high level quality game in this one as well. And I think that the context and design philosophy of Warriors games lends itself a little better to Fire Emblem. So that's, pretty interesting. I think that game could work even better as a Warriors title than Zelda did. So that game will be coming to the Nintendo Switch this year in fall. But it'd also be coming to Nintendo 3DS, which I assume is because the team that was developing Hyrule Warriors were able to get the engine working on the 3DS, so they figure, let's just take advantage of that. We have a huge install base on the 3DS. Let's get this one ported to that as well. Okay, so now we come to the big one for this event anyways. Not the big one in terms of what I'm actually excited for, but definitely what they focused the majority of their time on in this presentation, which I think is very telling about Nintendo's sort of current situation with their investors. But the bulk of this video was dedicated to a mobile Fire Emblem title called Fire Emblem Heroes, which will be launching first of all of these games that they announced. It's coming out on February 2nd, which is just around the corner. Now, this is going to kind of incorporate a similar idea to what you see in like Dissidia Final Fantasy, where you have characters across the entire franchise kind of being pulled into the world that this game takes place in to do battle. It won't be similar to Dissidia in any way in terms of gameplay, but just in the idea that we're going to pull all of these heroes from all of these different games in this long-running franchise, to sort of do battle together in this one title. So they have a few original character designs that they showed off. Some interesting looking characters. They have the one guy with the blue hair that sort of does a gradient into the gold. Pretty standard anime looking girl. They got a masked person. This other sort of like, it looks like a younger girl, but maybe like an evil summoner. Maybe she's the empress or something of the empire that she represents. I'll get to that more in a minute in terms of like story content that they've announced here. But the one that was really interesting to me was this like dimensional traveling hooded assassin guy with a gun. That seemed to be very out of place to me until it seemed to show him firing that weapon, and then it opened a portal where a few different Fire Emblem characters came out of, I think specifically from Fates and Awakening. So I wonder if perhaps this hooded character is meant to represent the player avatar, which they have done several times in a couple of different games across the series, where you have the opportunity to create your own player avatar, and that person generally serves as like a tactician for the army that the royal character will consult. And so it kind of puts you in the role of a tactician, which is sort of what you are in Fire Emblem anyways, right? As the person who can see the whole battlefield and direct the characters around. So yeah, I wonder if that hooded character is supposed to represent the player in that same sense. And that, using those portals, using that item, that gun he carries, you can sort of summon these different heroes across the Fire Emblem franchise into battle. That sort of incorporates the idea behind this mobile title. Okay, so now we get into some of the story content here. What they say is that the Emblem Empire is trying to take over every world it collides with. So this leads me to believe that this empire, it's incorporating multi-dimensional travel, I think, is pretty clear. But obviously they're going around to different Fire Emblem worlds, I would think, maybe all the different ones that the series has had, trying to take them over. And then you have the Ascarin Kingdom, the characters in white and gold who are opposing them. So this leads to, the classic, sort of construct of JRPGs, which are empires are always bad and kingdoms are always good. So the Ascarin Kingdom is opposed to the Emblem Empire. And they even state explicitly that as a summoner, you'll be able to call on Fire Emblem Heroes from all the games to help the Kingdom of Ascar. So obviously the summoner character, at least what I assumed to be the player avatar, was dressed in the same colors as the Ascarins. So I assume that there's not going to be like much of a choice there. Maybe kind of what they tried to implement in Fire Emblem Fates, where you could choose one or the other depending on if you got Birthright or Conquest, right? I think that in this case you're just going to be helping the Ascarin Kingdom. Now let's get into some of the gameplay that they showed here, and this is where, for people who aren't fans of mobile gaming like me, maybe a lot of the viewers here on the channel, this is where it gets a little dicey in terms of it remaining interesting to hardcore tactical players. Each map appears to be an 8x6 grid, and that's all there is to the map. Fire Emblem titles, obviously, and just any other kind of tactical RPG for that matter, have much larger maps than that, much larger and a lot more squares to work with, where you can kind of scroll around the map and see what's out there and everything like that. In here we have a very small grid, just an 8 squares tall by 6 squares wide grid that was designed to fit on smart device screens. And as far as I can see from everything they're showing here, all the different maps, that's it. There is no scrolling. The map doesn't get bigger than that. You can't move past that 8x6 grid border. And that's pretty disappointing to me. I feel like that means that not only will the scale of the battles be very small, but there won't be a lot of characters that you can actually have in your army on a map that size. And so these will be extremely small scale Fire Emblem battles that are not very representative of what the series has done traditionally in terms of just scale. The narrator here says, "Enjoy the full majesty of tactical role-playing even in short bursts." And that, to me, is almost immediately a contradiction. The full majesty of tactical role-playing is all about investing lots of time and thought into the battles and into your strategy and into your preparation. And short bursts don't allow you to do that. So if this game is designed to be played in short bursts, it's going to be missing, in my opinion, quite a few elements that make tactical RPGs so appealing to so many different players. The chibi art style actually reminds me quite a bit of Grand Blue Fantasy. It sort of looks very similar. And they also have these sort of like chibi voices for the characters as well, which I wasn't like the biggest fan of. It's not like that big of a deal, really. But it's obviously they're going for like kind of this cute factor that I don't feel like personally fits necessarily with Fire Emblem. But again, that's just kind of a small nitpick. It wouldn't be something that would make or break my interest in the game. They showed sort of two different ways you can engage with enemies. You can drag your character directly on top of the enemy you want to attack, and they'll sort of automatically go into the battle phase. Or you can drag and drop them on the square just adjacent to them, and then you'll be able to see some of the stat comparisons that you're used to seeing in Fire Emblem games before you choose to attack. So they've definitely incorporated and kept intact some of the strategic elements that exist in Fire Emblem games. They have terrain advantages still. They mention that specifically. And they also have the triangle system, the rock, paper, scissors sort of combat mechanic that they've had in all previous Fire Emblems. But I think that what they focused on was the elemental aspect of that, which I think is actually added in addition to the weapons. So in addition to having swords, spears, and axes, obviously the swords are beaten by the lances, and the lances are beaten by the axes, and the axes are beaten by the swords. That's sort of like the traditional system for Fire Emblem. I think on top of that, they're adding elements, fire, wind, and water. So water beats fire, fire beats wind, and wind beats water. At least that's what it seems to me. I mean, what I hope it means is that these things will stack. So let's say you have a character with a fire sword going up against a character with a water lance. I would assume that the water lance would have double effectiveness against the fire sword because lances beat swords and also water beats fire. But maybe that's negated to some extent if you have, say, a fire sword going up against a wind lance, right? Because the fire beats the wind, but the lance beats the sword. I wonder if that's actually going to play into it at all, or if they're just going with the element part of it, and the weapons don't necessarily matter. It's just all about red beats green, and green beats blue, and blue beats red. I'm not sure exactly, but it would be cool if they stacked those elements somehow and added a little bit of depth. But seeing as this is a mobile title, I don't know if we can truly expect that or not. Okay, so gacha systems, right? Gacha systems are going to be in the game, obviously. That's a big part of Japanese design philosophy when it comes to mobile titles. So, of course, they're going to have it here. And it seems, for the most part, the way that it works in this game is that you collect these orbs, elemental orbs, either through the gameplay, which I assume will come slowly, or you can purchase them through microtransactions, and you use them to summon heroes. So, of course, the colors of those orbs are going to be random. And it seems to me like a big focus of the strategy of this game is going to be on building a balanced army in terms of like the elements. So you want to have a balanced water, balanced wind, and balanced fire, elements in order to be able to handle any situation you find yourself in. So the fact that the color of the orbs or the element of the orbs will be randomly assigned, which is exactly what they said in the video, in the trailer here that they showed, is already something that I can see being very annoying, because you need a wind elemental, you need to kind of boost that side of your army, but you keep getting reds or you keep getting blues or whatever. But it also leads me to think that maybe the elements of your characters are possibly more important than the characters themselves. Like, and this was sort of shown off by the fact that they sort of unapologetically showed the frustration of gacha systems. They show him wanting to get Long Ku, but he doesn't get Long Ku on the first summoning. He has to try and do it again. But anyways, he gets Long Ku, he gets the character he's looking for, but then sends that character up against another character and it just gets completely obliterated. Now, I noticed that Long Ku was level 1 in a battle with, some level 15 characters. So yeah, they had a level 1 Long Ku that was red in element going up against a green enemy that was obviously higher in level. So they did that to sort of show that the character perhaps isn't as important as paying attention to elements, and also the star count, which they showed off a little bit as well. So when you summon a character, they'll come with like a certain number of stars, and a 1-star character obviously not very strong, 5-star character much stronger. And I'm sure that will play into like damage multipliers and that sort of thing. But one thing that they did show, they have a training tower that you can kind of use for grinding. And so you can level up the characters, and their star counts will level up as well. So you don't have to use the gacha system to try and get a 5-star character. You can actually take a level 1-star character and bring them up to a level 5-star character. So that at least is nice. They also showed off some timed events. I'm assuming that means like you'll have a few days when they announce the event to do these hero battles, which is where you face off against powerful heroes from the Fire Emblem franchise. And if you can defeat the hero in the battle, then you will have recruited them onto your team. So, timed events, sort of similar to what they do with MMOs and that sort of thing. Anyways, for the most part, that's kind of what they showed. Again, the game is coming on February 2nd, so that's very, very soon. Those are the 4 games that were announced. Obviously, the fact that they focused so much on the mobile title, one, is due to the fact that it's coming out first. It's right around the corner, but also I think indicative of the fact that the investors are really pressuring Nintendo to get into mobile development. And, you can feel about that as you do. I really don't like mobile titles. I hate gacha systems. I hate, that element of randomness in games. It really turns me off. And so I expect that while I might give this game a try, I will not play it for very long. On top of that, I feel like the limited size of the maps, with the 8x6 grid and some of the other choices that they're making here. Another thing that they did show in this mobile title is that even when your character is defeated in battle, they have a little asterisk that kind of comes up at the top right of the screen. And it says defeated heroes will return to your unit after the battle has ended. So this indicates to me that there won't be a permadeath mechanic whatsoever in this, which is a huge part of what makes Fire Emblem Fire Emblem. So if there's no permadeath in this, they have the 8x6 grids and some of these other choices they made. I have a feeling it's not going to be something that's actually very tactical. It's going to be what a lot of people call very casual, made for a casual audience. And even though they state that these battles will be tough, what he says specifically is that Fire Emblem fans will find the battle intensity they've come to expect from the series, but considering these design choices, I really have a hard time thinking that will be true. So yeah, I'm not particularly excited for this myself, but maybe it will rope in a wider group of people who can become fans of the series, try out the mainline games, and really sort of broaden the amount of people who enjoy and know what Fire Emblem is, and maybe that'll be a good thing for the franchise. I don't know, we'll see. For me, though, I'm very excited for the Switch title, but the fact that they didn't show anything is, not necessarily a problem. I mean, it's nice to know it's in development, but I would have liked to have seen, some concept art or just something from it. So what excites me the most about this Direct is definitely Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. I'm very, very excited for that game. Yeah, I'm excited that it's so close, and I'm really excited that it's just one game, and that I'm going to be able to play one of the titles in the series, one of the few titles in the series I've not actually had a chance to play before. We'll be having an officially localized version that will include a lot of those mechanics and elements that were unique to that one game that have not been seen in any of the others. That's very exciting to me. I'm very, very excited to try that game out, and I will keep you guys updated on more news as it comes in regarding that game as we move towards its May 19th release. So that just about covers it for all the Fire Emblem stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of this news. If you guys are Fire Emblem fans, what you're looking forward to and what you're not, in the comment section, and we'll discuss it there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again really soon.